house felt wrong that morning, too still for a place where two toddlers lived. Then a sound floated through the quiet, so small it almost didn't feel real. "Mommy." Ryan Porter stopped at the doorway. His briefcase slid from his hand and landed on the rug without a thud. He didn't blink, he didn't breathe, he stared. On the soft gray carpet, his twin boys, Caleb and Owen, sat propped against their pillows, legs stiff, arms resting by their sides. And kneeling in front of them was the maid, Jenna, still in her black and white uniform, yellow cleaning gloves on her hands. Her arms were stretched toward the boys like she was holding the air steady. Her voice shook as she whispered, "It's okay, baby, I'm here." The word came again, almost a breath. "Mommy," this time from the other twin. For a heartbeat, Ryan felt the world tilt. The boys were born with bodies that would not bend and mouths that would not form words. 2 years of doctors and therapy and silence. 2 years of waiting and praying and pretending he was strong. And now, in his own living room, both boys moved their lips and made a sound he had never heard them make. They were calling the maid, Mommy. If this moment just grabbed your heart, don't blink. What happens next will shock you even more. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments so I can shout you out in the next episode. Ryan's throat went dry. He took one step into the room and felt the house breathe again, the faint hum of the fridge, the tick of the wall clock, a car rolling by outside. He watched Jenna, who still hadn't seen him. She leaned closer to Caleb, eyes soft, voice warm. "You're safe," she said, no louder than a secret. "You can try, I'm right here." Caleb blinked slow, like pushing his eyes open took all his strength. Owen's fingers twitched against his blanket. They were small movements, the kind therapists wrote down and called promising. But to Ryan, they felt like a door cracking open in a dark room. "Jenna," he said, and his voice sounded strange in his own ears. She turned so fast her ponytail swung at her neck. She saw him, and something like fear flickered across her face. The twins made a soft sound in their throats, not words, just effort. Jenna pulled off one glove and set it on the rug. "Mr. Porter," she said, standing, careful not to bump the boys' pillows. "I can explain." Ryan held up a hand. He didn't know if he wanted an explanation. He didn't know anything except that his boys, his quiet, brave boys, had tried to speak in front of someone who wasn't him. "Do it again," he said, eyes on Caleb. "Say it." The word felt heavy. He crouched, suit pants pulling at his knees, tie brushing the carpet. "Say it, buddy." Caleb's mouth worked around nothing. A sound came out, tiny and raw, then faded like a bubble popping. Owen's eyes shone, wide and dark. He looked from his brother to Jenna and back to Ryan like he was choosing who to trust. Jenna knelt again. "We don't push," she whispered. "We make it safe, we make it fun." She turned to the coffee table where a small blue speaker sat beside the boys' therapy cards, pictures of apples, dogs, cups, faces with open mouths. She pressed a button and a soft hum filled the room. Not a song with words, just a low, gentle tone. She watched the twins' faces. "Feel it," she said softly. "In your chest like a bee." She took the boys' small hands and placed them lightly against her throat. "Buzz," she said, letting the sound vibrate through her skin. Caleb's fingers trembled against her neck. Owen's lips parted. Ryan had seen 1,000 therapy tricks, flashcards, vowel shapes, mouth stretches. He had never seen this, not like this. It looked strange and tender at the same time. It looked like someone building a bridge out of thin air. "What are you doing?" he asked, and it came out sharper than he meant. Jenna didn't flinch. "We're playing with sound," she said. "I read that some kids feel the voice before they can copy the voice. I thought maybe if they feel safe, their bodies might try." "Who told you to try?" Ryan asked. "Who said you could do anything without me here?" Jenna swallowed. "No one," she said. "I'm sorry, I was dusting. The boys were watching me. I started humming the way my mom used to and they looked at me, then it happened." Ryan's chest tightened. His late wife's picture sat on the mantel, Laura, smiling in a blue summer dress, hair in the wind, the twins newborn and small in her arms. She had believed in miracles. Ryan had believed in spreadsheets and schedules. After she died, he believed in getting through one day at a time. He looked from the picture to the floor, to Jenna, to the boys. "They called you Mommy," he said, and the word scraped his throat. "They called you that." Jenna's eyes filled with tears. She didn't blink away. "They made a sound," she said. "A shape. I don't know if they meant the word. I don't want to take anything that belongs to you or your wife. I just want them to feel safe enough to try." The house was still for a long moment. Ryan could hear the clock again. He could hear his own heartbeat, steady and slow like a drum. He stood up and forced his voice to be steady. "No more experiments without me," he said. "No more whatever this is. When the therapist comes, you can help, not before." Jenna nodded. "Yes, sir." She slipped her glove back on and stood. But before she took a step, Caleb's hand lifted off the blanket. It hovered in the air, shaky, and then, like it weighed 1,000 pounds, fell toward Jenna and landed on her wrist. He didn't grab, he didn't hold, he just touched her, a little tap like rain against skin. Owen made that tiny sound again, and this time it didn't fade, it lifted a breath longer. Ryan's eyes burned, he didn't blink. He went to work and sat through 2 meetings without hearing a word. His assistant asked if he wanted coffee. He said yes and didn't drink it. He kept seeing Caleb's hand touch Jenna's wrist like it was the most natural thing in the world. He kept hearing that soft sound like a seed pushing through soil. At lunch, he parked his car in the black glass tower he owned and didn't go inside. He leaned back in the seat and stared at the steering wheel, palms against the leather, and tried to catch his breath. By afternoon, he was home again, hours early, the elevator rising so slow it felt broken. He stepped into the foyer and listened. There was a soft rhythm coming from the living room, not music, just a pattern, tap, pause, tap, tap, pause. He followed it and stopped in the doorway. Jenna sat cross-legged on the rug, no gloves now, her hands resting on her knees. The twins were in front of her with their therapy switches, two big buttons connected to a small speaker. When you pressed a button, it made a sound. She had taped simple picture cards to each one. One card showed a smiling face, the other showed a cup. Happy, she said, tapping the first button with one finger. A cheerful beep. Drink, she said, tapping the second. A soft chime. She didn't touch the boys' hands. She didn't make their bodies do anything. She waited. The room breathed. Owen's eyes moved to the cup card. Slowly, like pushing through heavy mud, his right index finger lifted and hovered above the button. He missed it. He tried again. He hit the edge. The button chimed. Owen blinked, surprised at himself. Ryan felt tears slide down his face before he knew they were there. He wiped them away with the back of his hand and cleared his throat. Jenna looked up and saw him, and her eyes darted to the boys like she was afraid he would break the spell. He didn't speak. He put his phone on the table and hit record. Then he sat on the floor, a careful distance away, and watched his sons try. Jenna's voice stayed low and even. We take our time, she murmured. We don't rush, we cheer for tries. She tapped the smile card. Happy, she waited. Caleb's mouth made a small O, then a crooked line. He breathed in, he breathed out. A little sound came, the kind that means nothing in most houses and means everything in this one. Ryan felt something pull in his chest like a knot loosening. He didn't know if it was hope or fear. Time became soft around the edges. Minutes slipped by without counting. The sun shifted across the floor, a bird landed on the porch railing and flew away. Ryan recorded everything. He texted no one. When the boys started to tire, Jenna moved smooth as warm water. She propped their pillows, adjusted their feet so they wouldn't cramp, dabbed a bit of lotion on a spot that always got red. Every touch was gentle, every move was slow. The twins watched her like she was a lighthouse. At dinner, Ryan didn't know what to say. He sat at the table across from the twins' high-back support chairs, cut his chicken into small squares, and watched their eyes follow the fork. Mr. Porter, Jenna said from the kitchen. Should I make the boys puree now? He nodded. Yes, thank you. His voice had sand in it. He ate without tasting anything. He kept seeing Laura's laugh. He kept hearing the doctor's voice from 2 years ago. They may never speak. He had hardened himself around those words like clay. Now, one tiny sound on a quiet morning had cracked the shell. After dinner came bath time. It was a careful routine, warm water, cloth under the knees, 2 towels ready, gentle washing that was more like a blessing than a scrub. Jenna talked the whole time, not baby talk, just soft talk, words that made pictures. Water on your toes, she said, pouring a thin stream down Caleb's foot. Like the ocean, cold at first, then nice. She looked at Ryan. Do you want to hold the towel? He took it without speaking and patted Owen's hair. Owen's eyes closed like he could feel the word nice in his bones. Bedtime was the quietest part of the day. Jenna dimmed the lamp and sat on the floor between the twins' cribs. She pulled a small wooden music box from her pocket. It was old and scratched, a little chipped at one corner with a tiny star carved on top. She turned the key and a simple tune filled the room, sweet and slow and a little sad. My mom used to play this when the power went out, she whispered. We'd light one candle and listen until we fell asleep. She didn't sing the words. She just hummed the same gentle hum from the morning, letting the vibrations sit in the air like warm light. Caleb's fingers curled and uncurled. Owen's lashes fluttered. Ryan stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, the other pressed against his chest. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to say that the music box and the rituals and the hum were too much, too personal. He wanted to protect his boys from hope because hope had broken his heart before. But the room felt softer than it had in months. The boys looked less tight in their bodies. The air felt like a blanket. He didn't move. When the twins finally slept, Jenna closed the music box and slipped it back into her pocket. She turned and found Ryan watching her. They stood like that for a breath. Where did you get that? He asked quietly. A yard sale, she said. It was on a table with old picture frames and a cracked lamp. I turned the key and it felt like calm, so I keep it for nights when the world is loud. He nodded, looking at the dark shape of his sons. Don't bring it again, he said, and his voice didn't sound like his. I don't want you to make them think you're. He stopped. The word wouldn't come out. He couldn't say mom. He couldn't put Jenna in that sentence with Laura. Jenna's jaw tightened for a second, then relaxed. I understand, she said. She started to go, then hesitated. Mr. Porter, today wasn't me. It was them. They tried. That came from them. He closed his eyes. Good night, Jenna. She nodded and slipped past him, her steps soft on the hall rug. The house went quiet again. Ryan sat on the floor between the cribs, back against the wall, and watched the rise and fall of 2 small chests. He let his head fall back and stared at the ceiling until the white turned into clouds. He thought about faith. He thought about science. He thought about how once he and Laura had stood in the same room and picked paint colors and laughed about nothing. He thought about the tiniest sounds that change a life. Phone buzzed on the floor. A text from the lead therapist, Ms. Ellis. Reminder, 9 a.m. home session tomorrow. Want to discuss introducing a low-frequency sound board could be helpful, but careful, wrong use can overwhelm. He stared at the words, low-frequency sound board. He pictured Jenna's hand at her throat buzzing. He typed, come early if you can. He added nothing else. He picked up the phone and watched the video he'd recorded. In it, you could see Caleb's hand lift, shake, and tap. You could hear the small chime and Jenna's soft, yes, you did it. You could see Ryan's shoes in the corner of the frame, motionless. He didn't sleep much. He drifted in and out, waking to check the twins, counting breaths. At 3 a.m., a storm rolled in, a light one, rain tapping the windows, distant thunder like a tired lion. He thought of the music box. He thought of the word mommy floating in the morning like a paper boat in a wide river. He thought of what was fair and what was right and what was possible. At 6 a.m., the house started to stir. The coffee maker clicked on. The first bus hissed at the corner. Jenna moved in the kitchen, careful, quiet, making oatmeal. Ryan walked in and stood by the counter. Morning, she said, eyes on the pot. Morning, he said. He wanted to say thank you. He wanted to say back off. He wanted two opposite things at the same time. Ms. Ellis is coming early, he said instead. She wants to try something new. You can stay in the room, but you do what she says. Jenna nodded, of course. At 8:20, the doorbell rang. Ms. Ellis strode in with a calm smile, a tote bag on her shoulder. Rain dots on her glasses, she greeted the twins the way she always did, first by name, then with a pause, giving them time to look at her face. Good morning, Caleb, she said softly. Good morning, Owen, she looked at Ryan. You look tired, he exhaled a laugh. You have no idea. He didn't tell her yet, he wanted her to see it with her own eyes. They set up in the living room. Ms. Ellis pulled a small padded board from her bag, thick foam wrapped in vinyl with a flat disc attached by a cord. This is a bone conduction pad, she said. We can rest it against the chest or back. It plays a deep, gentle hum. Sometimes it helps the brain connect to the idea of voice. Her eyes flicked to Jenna, and for a beat, something unspoken moved between the two women like they were measuring each other. I'll run point, Ms. Ellis said. You can observe, she added to Jenna. Jenna nodded and stepped back, hands clasped. Ms. Ellis placed the pad against Caleb's chest, above his heart, through his soft t-shirt with the tiny rocket ship pattern. She turned the dial. A hum rose, low and smooth, almost like the music box, but even simpler. Caleb's eyes widened. His lips pressed together, then relaxed. Ms. Ellis moved the pad to his back. Feel that, she murmured. Nothing to do, just feel. She switched to Owen. Same hum, same careful voice. Can I show you something? Ryan said, breaking the quiet. He moved to the table and tapped his phone. The video filled the screen. Ms. Ellis watched, her mouth tightening as she concentrated. The video ended. She looked at the twins. She looked at Jenna. Who taught you to do that? She asked, not unkindly. Jenna held her ground. No one, she said. It just made sense to try. Ms. Ellis nodded slowly. You have good instincts, she said, but we have to be careful. Too much frequency, too close to the throat, can trigger a gag reflex or a fear response. We start far, we move close, step by step. Jenna's eyes flicked to the boys again. Understood. They worked in short bursts, 20 seconds on, a minute off, letting the boys rest. Ryan sat close, elbows on his knees, and learned to watch for signs Ms. Ellis named. Quiet hands, soft eyes, loose mouth. When Caleb's hand tightened into a fist, Ms. Ellis turned the hum down. When Owen's breath sped up, she smiled and spoke slower. The room felt like a lab and a chapel at the same time. Ryan found that he could breathe all the way down to his belly. Then something small and bright happened. Ms. Ellis had just moved the pad away from Owen and tapped the happy button to reset the sound routine. Owen watched her finger, then looked at Jenna, then at the button. He lifted his hand and hovered over it. He stopped. He turned his head slow, careful toward Ryan. Their eyes met. Owen opened his mouth. A shape formed, not a word, not yet, but it was the same shape as the morning before. Ms. Ellis went still. We wait, she whispered. The whole house seemed to lean in. Owen moved his lips again. A puff of air came out, then a scrape of sound, then the beginning of a letter, an M, maybe, or just a hum. Caleb made a sound too, like a breath catching. Jenna pressed her hand flat against her own chest and breathed out for them to copy. MMMM. Ms. Ellis shot her a look, half warning, half please keep going. Jenna didn't move closer, she just hummed. MMMM. Ryan felt his heart hammer. He whispered without meaning to, you can do it, buddy. The boys made the sound again, just a shade louder, just a hair clearer. It was like watching a sunrise through fog. Ms. Ellis nodded once. One more, she said quietly. Then we stop. The front door opened. Everyone flinched, the hum cut off. The twins' mouths closed. Ryan stood up fast, blood hot in his face. A woman stepped into the living room, her heels clicking on the floor, her voice bright. Ryan, I tried calling. She stopped when she saw the scene, the therapist, the pad, the twins, Jenna on the rug. Her smile wavered. Oh, I didn't know you had extra help. This was Nina, Ryan's sister-in-law, Laura's younger sister. who dropped by without warning and always had opinions about what was best for the boys. Nina's eyes fell on Jenna and narrowed just a little. I thought we agreed the maid cleans, not does therapy. She gave a thin smile at Ms. Ellis. No offense. Ms. Ellis's calm didn't crack. We're in a session, she said softly. We were making good progress. Nina's smile sharpened. Progress? She looked at Ryan. Since when do we let staff run their own little experiments with the boys? Jenna didn't speak. She tucked her hands under her thighs like she was holding them still. Something hard rose in Ryan's chest, pride, anger, fear. He didn't know. He had told Jenna to stop. He had told her to wait. But he had also watched his son move his mouth for the first time. He opened his mouth to say something measured, something careful. Caleb's monitor beeped. It wasn't loud, it wasn't the scream of an emergency. It was a soft alert, the kind that means pay attention. Ms. Ellis was already moving, eyes on the numbers. It's okay, she said, voice steady. His heart rate jumped, could be excitement, could be fatigue. She glanced at Ryan. We need calm now. Ryan turned to Nina. Please wait in the kitchen. She frowned. I'm family. He didn't raise his voice, please. Nina hesitated, then pivoted on her heel and left the room. The air felt thinner. Ms. Ellis lowered the lights one notch. Jenna reached for the music box and stopped herself, looking to Ms. Ellis for permission. Ms. Ellis gave the smallest nod. Low, she said, and no words. Jenna wound the key with careful fingers. The soft tune rose like a memory. The beeping of the monitor slowed. Caleb's fists loosened. Owen's face smoothed. Ryan felt his knees shake. He sat down hard. His hands were cold. He looked at Jenna in the dim light, at her face bent over the little box, at the boys' bodies relaxing by inches. He saw the way she watched them like a mother watches a baby. Every breath, every twitch, every tiny sign. He thought of the morning, the small word that almost was a word. He thought of Nina's voice and Ms. Ellis's warning and his own rules like locked doors. He felt something inside him shift, a door unclicking. Then he noticed something he had never seen before. Jenna's wrist turned as she closed the music box and a thin bracelet slid down her arm. It was a simple band, cheap metal rubbed smooth by time. Hanging from it was a tiny silver star. The same tiny star carved into the top of the music box. The same star he had seen once, long ago, in a photo Laura had shown him. A picture of the volunteer who sat with her in the NICU when the twins were born, the girl with the calm eyes and the star bracelet who hummed to the bobbies when the machines were too loud. Where did you say you got that box? Ryan asked, his voice barely there. Jenna froze, her fingers curled over the lid. She looked at the twins. She looked at Ryan. Her lips parted like she might say yard sale again, but the word didn't come. Ms. Ellis glanced between them, reading the air, not speaking. The room went so quiet Ryan could hear the rain ticking on the window. Jenna took a breath. Mr. Porter, she said, voice shaking now in a way he hadn't heard all day. There's something I should have told you from the first day I walked into this house. Caleb's monitor gave one soft warning beep and then stilled. Owen's eyes, wide and dark, fixed on Jenna's mouth. Ryan's heart stopped in his chest as Jenna lifted the bracelet with the tiny star. And before she could speak, the front door swung open again and a man's voice called from the hall, firm and official. Mr. Porter, we need to ask you and your staff some questions about a report we received this morning. Ryan Porter froze. The man's voice echoed through the hall like a gavel striking in a silent courtroom. His mind raced before his body did. He turned toward the doorway where two men stood, both wearing gray suits with laminated IDs clipped to their pockets. The taller one spoke first. Mr. Porter, I'm Detective Harris, Child Protection Unit. This is Officer Lane. We received a report concerning possible neglect or endangerment regarding your children. The words hit Ryan like cold water. Neglect, he repeated, eyes wide. You can't be serious. Behind him, the twins' monitors blinked softly and Jenna's hands went still on her knees. Ms. Ellis stood quietly, professional calm wrapped around her like armor. Detective, she said evenly, I'm their therapist. Nothing harmful is happening here. We were in the middle of a monitored sensory exercise. Harris's eyes flicked to the small music box still in Jenna's hand. Is that part of it? He asked. Jenna nodded. It's to help calm them when they get overstimulated. The officer scribbled something in his notebook. Mind if we take a look around? Ryan's chest tight. You can't just walk into my home and sir, Harris interrupted, calm but firm. We're required to verify the welfare of minors in a reported case. It'll only take a few minutes. Ryan swallowed the fire building in his throat. He could already guess who made the report. Nina, of course. She had probably seen the session and decided it was unsafe. Fine, he said tightly, but you're going to see that my children are perfectly safe. He stepped aside and watched them move through the house like shadows, opening doors, glancing into rooms, whispering into radios. Jenna sat frozen, her face pale. Ms. Ellis knelt beside the twins, whispering gently to them so they wouldn't be afraid. Owen's eyes darted between the strangers and Caleb made a small sound, half whimper, half question. Ryan knelt too. "Hey, it's okay," he whispered. "Daddy's here, nobody's going to hurt you." But his words trembled and he knew they could hear it. One of the officers crouched near the therapy board and the sound pad. "These devices yours?" he asked. Ms. Ellis nodded. "They're approved equipment, I brought them." "And this maid," Harris said, turning toward Jenna. "She's been performing therapy too." Jenna opened her mouth but her voice came out weak. "Only small things," she said. "I sing to them, talk to them, I didn't mean any harm." Ryan stepped between them, his anger burning now. "She's done nothing wrong. She's the only reason my son's made progress. If you're looking for neglect, look somewhere else." Harris met his eyes with a steady gaze. "We're not here to accuse, sir. We're here to confirm." He turned back to his partner. "Write it down. Both children alert, no visible injuries, room temperature stable, caregiver and therapist present." After 20 tense minutes, Harris finally closed his notebook. "Everything appears fine," he said, "but we'll need a brief statement from everyone, routine procedure." Ms. Ellis handled hers first, calm and professional. Then Jenna's turn came. Her hands shook as she held the pen. "State your full name," Harris said. "Jenna Morris," she replied softly. Ryan's heart thudded. He had never asked her last name. Harris frowned slightly as he wrote. "And your relationship to the family?" "Employee," she said. "Housekeeper, how long have you been working here?" Jenna hesitated. 3 months. "And before that?" The pause stretched. Ryan looked at her. She seemed to shrink in her seat. "Different jobs," she murmured. "Cleaning, assisting families." "Any connection to the Porters before you were hired?" Her fingers tightened around the pen. "No direct connection," she said quietly. Harris raised a brow but said nothing. When it was over, the two men thanked them and left with polite efficiency, leaving behind a heavy silence. The moment the door closed, Ryan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. "Nina," he muttered. "She's the only one who could have called them." Ms. Ellis nodded. "Probably, but what matters is everything checked out. The boys are safe." She gathered her equipment and gave Jenna a careful look. "You did well," she said softly, "but from now on, no unapproved sessions." "Agreed." Jenna nodded quickly, her face still pale. "Agreed." Ms. Ellis packed her bag and turned to Ryan. "I'll come again tomorrow." "Try to rest tonight," she left quietly. The house returned to silence, the kind that hums with leftover tension. Ryan walked to the window and stared at the rain streaking the glass. "A report," he said under his breath. "Do you know how easily something like that can ruin a reputation? My company's name could end up in headlines." Jenna stood by the twins' cribs, eyes down. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted to cause trouble." He turned sharply. "Then why didn't you tell me the truth?" Her head snapped up. "About what?" "About who you are." He stepped closer, voice low but heavy. "That bracelet, the star. My wife showed me a photo years ago, back when the boys were born. She said a girl in the NICU sang to them. The same bracelet. That girl was you, wasn't it?" Jenna's lips parted, but no sound came. Ryan's jaw tightened. "You lied when you said you didn't know us." Finally, she whispered. "I didn't lie. I said no direct connection. I didn't think you'd remember me." Ryan's voice softened, confusion threading through the anger. "Why didn't you tell me?" Jenna took a shaky breath. "Because I didn't want you to think I came here for anything else. Back then I was just a volunteer. Your wife, she was kind. She said she felt calm when I sang. The twins were tiny. I used to hum by their incubator when she had to rest. She said the sound helped them sleep." Her eyes glistened. "When I saw the job posting months ago and realized it was your family, I didn't know if I should apply, but something told me I could help." Ryan rubbed his temples, trying to process it all. "You should have said something from day one." Jenna's voice cracked. "Would you have hired me if I had?" The question hung in the air like a bell's echo. Ryan didn't answer. He looked at her, really looked this time, the tired eyes, the hands that never seemed to rest, the soft steadiness she carried even when she was scared. He thought of how the twins looked at her, the way they reached for her when they never reached for anyone else. He hated that she was right. If she had told him, he probably would have said no. "You can keep your job," he said finally. "But from now on, I want everything documented. Every activity, every song, every touch, I need records." Jenna nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." She wiped her eyes and turned back to the twins, adjusting their blankets. Ryan stood for another long moment, then left the room. That night the rain stopped, but the house felt heavier. Ryan sat alone in his study, staring at his wife's old journal. He opened it to the last page she'd written before she passed. "If they ever find their voices, it'll be through love, not medicine." He closed the book slowly, heart aching. Upstairs he could hear faint sounds, the creak of the floor, Jenna's whisper, the twins' monitors. He thought about what the detective had said. "We're not here to accuse." But the report had cracked something inside him, reminding him how fragile everything was. One misunderstanding and the world could see him as a monster. He couldn't let that happen. Not again. Hours passed, midnight came. The house slept except for Jenna. She sat by the twins' beds, the small lamp casting soft light over her face. She held the music box in her lap, turning the key slowly but not opening it. Her eyes stayed on the boys. "You're stronger than anyone knows," she whispered. "You just have to believe it." Caleb stirred, his lips twitching. Jenna leaned closer. "It's okay, baby," she said gently. "Try." The faintest sound came, barely a breath, then another. Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to call for Ryan to make him see, but fear held her back. What if the noise woke the boys too much? What if it started another misunderstanding? She stayed quiet, recording it on her phone instead. "It's okay," she whispered again. "Mommy's here." The word slipped out without meaning to, and she froze. She hadn't meant it, it just came. Caleb made another sound, this time a soft, clear "ma." Jenna covered her mouth, tears spilling. "Oh God," she breathed. "You did it." The next morning, Ryan walked into the nursery and saw Jenna asleep in the chair, the twins still in their cribs. The music box sat open on the nightstand. His eyes landed on her phone, its screen still recording. He picked it up carefully and tapped the video. The sound filled the room, quiet breathing, then the faintest "ma." He dropped into the chair, stunned. His throat closed. He replayed it 3 times just to be sure. There was no mistake. His son had spoken, a sound that wasn't random, a sound shaped like a word. He looked at Jenna, sleeping with her head tilted back, exhaustion written across her face. She had stayed up all night for them. He felt something shift deep inside, something soft he hadn't felt since before Laura died. Jenna woke with a start, blinking. When she saw him holding her phone, panic flashed across her face. "I wasn't," she began, but he held up a hand. "It's fine." His voice was low, steady. He said "ma." Her lips trembled. "He did." Ryan nodded slowly. "You caught it on tape." She nodded again, eyes filling. "I didn't mean to call myself." "Don't," he said gently. "Don't apologize." He looked down at the twins. "Whatever you're doing, it's working." She stared at him in disbelief. "You mean you're not mad?" He shook his head. "I'm scared, Jenna. That's what I am. Scared of getting my hopes up, but I can't ignore what I just heard." They spent the morning documenting everything. Ms. Ellis arrived, stunned by the footage, her professional calm cracking into a smile. "This changes everything," she whispered. "We'll need to report it to the neurologist. They'll want scans." Ryan agreed, though part of him feared doctors might try to explain away the miracle. Nina called twice, but he ignored her. He didn't want her shadow on this moment. The house felt different now, alive again. When Jenna hummed, the twins' eyes lit up. When Ryan walked into the room, they followed his voice. Hope, small and fragile, had found its way back in. That evening, Ryan stood in the doorway watching Jenna feed the twins their dinner. Caleb's spoon dripped and Jenna laughed softly. "Messy champion," she teased. Ryan smiled without meaning to. "You're good with them," he said quietly. She looked up, startled, then smiled shyly. "They make it easy." He hesitated, then asked, "When you were at the hospital back then, why did you volunteer? You were young." Jenna looked down at the bowl. "My mom was sick. I spent a lot of time at hospitals. I couldn't fix her, but I could help someone else feel less alone. So I stayed after school and sang for the Bobbies. Your wife was the first person who thanked me for it." Ryan's throat tightened. "Laura always believed in people," he said softly. "She would have liked you." The night stretched quiet and warm. For the first time in years, Ryan didn't hide in his office. He stayed with the twins until they fell asleep. When Jenna left the room, he followed her to the kitchen. "Jenna," he said suddenly, "why did you really come back? You could have worked anywhere." She paused, her hand on the sink. "Because I remembered how your wife looked at those boys, like she saw something nobody else could see. I wanted to see it too." Ryan nodded slowly. "You have." They stood there in silence, the hum of the refrigerator filling the space between them. Then the phone rang. Ryan answered, his face changing as he listened. "Yes," he said after a long pause. "I understand. Tomorrow morning." He hung up and looked at Jenna. "The hospital wants to run a full evaluation. They think the twins might be responding to auditory resonance therapy." "That's good, right?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Yes, but they also want to interview everyone involved. That includes you." Her face paled. "Interview me? It's standard," he said. "But they'll ask questions about your background." Jenna looked down, her fingers twisting together. "Is there something I should know?" Ryan asked carefully. She hesitated too long. "No," she whispered, "nothing." But her voice told him otherwise. Later that night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He replayed everything in his head, the visit from the detectives, the miracle word, Jenna's trembling hands. Something didn't add up. He opened his laptop and searched Jenna Morris Hospital volunteer records. After a few minutes, he found an old community newsletter photo. Children's Hospital Volunteers of Hope 2019. There she was, younger, smiling, wearing the same star bracelet. But below her name, another line caught his eye. Jenna Morris, formerly Jenna Porter. His breath caught. Porter, his last name. He clicked the article. It mentioned a foster background, a brief adoption that didn't last, a system mix-up. Ryan leaned back in shock. Could it be? He read it again. Jenna had been placed in his parents' foster program when she was a teenager before he moved out. A forgotten memory flickered, his mother mentioning a quiet girl who used to hum to the plants. He rubbed his temples. "What are you hiding, Jenna?" he whispered. The next morning came with gold light and the smell of rain. Jenna arrived early, nervous but smiling. The twins were already awake, bright and restless. Ms. Ellis met them at the door. "The hospital's ready," she said. "We'll go together." Ryan nodded, glancing at Jenna. She avoided his eyes. The ride was quiet, filled with soft music and the steady hum of tires. At the hospital, doctors greeted them warmly, leading the group into a small observation room. Electrodes were placed gently on the twins' heads, the sound pad on their chests. "We'll start simple," the neurologist said. "We'll play low frequencies and measure cognitive response." The lights dimmed. The hum began. Jenna stood behind the glass watching, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles whitened. The monitors flickered, spikes of brain activity danced across the screen. "They're responding," the neurologist murmured. "In both hemispheres," Ms. Ellis gasped quietly. "That's never happened before," Ryan's heart pounded. The hum changed pitch and Caleb's lips moved again. The faint sound came, "Ma," then Owen followed. The room erupted in controlled chaos, doctors rushing, recording, amazed. Ryan pressed a hand to the glass, tears spilling freely. On the other side, Jenna wept silently, her breath fogging the window. But then as the sound pad vibrated at a higher frequency, Caleb winced. His body stiffened. "Stop," Jenna cried, rushing forward. The doctor hesitated. "It's safe, stop," she shouted, hitting the control switch. The hum cut off instantly. Caleb slumped, breathing shallow. The neurologist looked stunned. "He was fine a moment ago." Jenna cradled the boy gently, whispering softly. Ryan watched, fear gripping him. "Is he okay?" he asked. Jenna nodded shakily. "Just overwhelmed," the doctor frowned. "We'll need to run more tests." But Ryan saw the truth. She had saved his son from real pain. And yet, he also saw the way the staff looked at her, questioning, suspicious. Who was this maid who knew when to stop before even the doctors did? Back home, the air felt thick with questions. Ryan confronted her quietly that night. "Why did you know to stop it before they did?" She hesitated. "Because I felt it," she whispered. "I know how they feel. I've been where they are." "What do you mean?" he pressed. She turned away, her voice trembling. "Because I was paralyzed once too." He froze. "What?" She looked at him, eyes glassy. "When I was 12, a fever hit my spine. I couldn't move for months. The doctors said I'd never walk again. But my mom refused to give up. She sang to me every night. The vibration helped me feel my body again. One day I moved my fingers, then my legs. The doctors called it impossible." She smiled faintly. "So when I saw your boys, I recognized that look, the one of wanting to move but not knowing how." Ryan sat down slowly, overwhelmed. "You never said any of this." She shook her head. "People look at you differently when they think you're broken. I didn't want pity, I wanted purpose." He looked at her differently then, not as an employee, not as a stranger, but as someone who carried the same fight his wife once had. The silence stretched between them, full of unspoken gratitude and awe. "Jenna," he said quietly, "you've changed everything." But before he could say more, a sharp knock echoed at the door. Ms. Ellis stepped in, her face pale. "Ryan," she said softly, "the hospital called. They ran a background check on all household staff before approving therapy continuation." Her voice shook. "They found something." Jenna's record was flagged under an old name and an unresolved guardianship file. "The state thinks she might still be a ward under your late father's program." Ryan's mouth went dry. Jenna's eyes filled with panic. "That's not true," she whispered. "I aged out years ago." Ms. Ellis held out the paper. "They want clarification immediately. If it's not cleared, she can't stay near the children." Ryan stared between them, heart pounding. The woman who gave his sons hope was suddenly at risk of being taken away. The boys' laughter echoed faintly from the nursery. He looked at Jenna, who stood shaking, clutching her bracelet. The tiny silver star caught. The silver star caught the light like a tiny moon. It trembled between Jenna's fingers as if it too was afraid. Ryan reached for the document Ms. Ellis held, eyes scanning the words that blurred before him. His father's name appeared in bold print: Porter Foundation for Child Welfare Guardianship Program. Beneath it, in smaller letters, subject: Jenna Morris, formerly Jenna Parker, State Ward ID 79214, pending closure. His stomach twisted. "This can't be right," he said, voice unsteady. "That program ended years ago. My father passed before the files were even digitized." Ms. Ellis looked apologetic. "They're requesting confirmation that she's fully released from state oversight. Until that's verified, hospital policy requires she maintain no unsupervised contact with minors under your care." Jenna's breath caught. "That means I can't be around the twins," she whispered. Ryan clenched his jaw. "We'll fix this. I'll make some calls first thing tomorrow." That night, the house fell into a heavy silence. Ryan sat in his office surrounded by papers, old photos, and a growing sense of unease. He opened a dusty folder from a storage box labeled Porter Foundation Records, Archive 2014. Inside were faded documents listing children's names, guardianship statuses, and transfer letters. And there on the third page he saw it: Jenna Parker, 14 years old, temporary placement pending adoption by Porter family. His hand froze. He remembered faintly his mother had mentioned a teenage girl they took in for a short while. Quiet, polite, loved to hum. He had been in college then, visiting home only on weekends. One evening he recalled hearing music drifting from the garden. A soft humming voice and the faint strum of a broken guitar. That memory, once small and meaningless, now returned with force. He leaned back, staring at the wall, the realization slowly sinking in. She hadn't been lying exactly, just protecting herself. She wasn't just a maid. She had once been part of his family's care, part of his home. Maybe she came back not by chance but by something deeper, some invisible pull of fate. He rubbed his face with both hands, torn between gratitude and confusion. How could he be angry at the very person who had given his sons what the doctors could? Yet how could he ignore the secret she had kept? In the nursery, Jenna sat on the rug, her back against the crib, eyes red from crying. She held the music box in her lap, turning it over and over. The twins were asleep, their little faces soft under the glow of the night lamp. She whispered to herself, I should leave before they make me leave. Her voice trembled. I can't let them see me escorted out like a stranger. She brushed a tear away and stood, moving toward the door. But she froze when she saw a shadow in the hallway. Ryan stood there, arms crossed, a mixture of sadness and exhaustion on his face. You're not going anywhere, he said quietly. Jenna's lips parted. Mr. Porter, it's better if I do. You saw the paper, they'll just think I'm… He stepped closer, cutting her off. I don't care what they think, those boys spoke because of you. If the system wants to drag up old files, fine, I'll handle it, but you're not walking away from them now. Her eyes filled again, her voice breaking. You don't understand, people like me don't win against systems. They'll paint it like I lied, like I infiltrated your house. Ryan's voice softened. Then let them, the truth will stand when the noise fades. I've got lawyers, Jenna, I can make calls they'll have to answer. For a long moment she just stared at him, as if trying to measure whether he truly meant it. Then she whispered, why are you doing this? He looked at her for a long time. Because my son smiled for the first time in 2 years. Because when you hum they breathe easier. Because you gave them something I thought I'd never see again, hope. His voice cracked on the last word. She looked away, biting her lip hard to stop the tears that kept coming. They stood in silence, the only sound the faint rhythm of the twins' monitors. After a long pause, Ryan said softly, you mentioned your mother once. What happened to her? Jenna swallowed hard. She died when I was 13, pneumonia. We didn't have money for proper care. After that, I went into the system. Different homes, different names. Your family's foundation placed me in one of their programs. Your mother, she was kind. She said I reminded her of you when you were little. Ryan blinked, caught off guard. Of me? Yes, Jenna said quietly. She said you used to hide in the garden when things got hard, that you liked quiet places. He smiled faintly despite the ache in his chest. She wasn't wrong. Next morning, Ryan made calls from sunrise. His lawyer, old family contacts, the social welfare board, anyone who might have access to the Porter Foundation's archived files. But bureaucracy moves slower than mercy. It could take a week, one voice said over the line. We need signatures, verification, maybe even a court order. Ryan slammed the phone down, frustration bubbling over. A week felt like a lifetime. He turned and saw Jenna standing in the doorway holding a folded piece of paper. What's that? He asked. She stepped forward and placed it on his desk. My resignation, she said softly, his jaw tightened. No, you have to let me, she said firmly, voice trembling but steady. I won't risk your boys' therapy. If they flag your home for non-compliance, it'll affect them. I can't do that to you. Ryan shook his head. I'm not letting fear decide what happens in my house. Jenna looked down. Please, she whispered, don't make this harder. But before he could answer, a sound echoed from the hall, Owen crying, a thin wail of distress. Both of them rushed toward the nursery. The boy's small hands trembled, his monitor blinking faster than usual. Ms. Ellis had just arrived, kneeling by Caleb's bed, adjusting the sensors. He woke up scared, she said, heart rate up. Jenna instinctively moved forward, kneeling beside Owen. Hey, sweetheart, she murmured, it's okay. Her voice was soft, even, the crying slowed almost instantly. The hum of her voice filled the room, a melody so familiar the twins visibly relaxed. Ms. Ellis watched in astonishment. That's incredible, she whispered. He's regulating to her tone. Ryan knelt beside them, the sight breaking something inside him. If you still think you're leaving, he said quietly to Jenna, watch this and tell me they'll be better off without you. She looked down at Owen, his little hand gripping her sleeve, his chest rising steady again. I can't promise I'll win this fight, she whispered, but I'll stay until someone drags me out. Ryan nodded once. That's all I ask. Over the next few days, the mansion turned into a strange mixture of peace and tension. Ms. Ellis continued therapy sessions, this time documenting every detail for medical review. Jenna helped with feeding, baths, and exercises but kept her distance when outsiders came. The twins, however, refused to let her stay far. If she left the room, they cried until she returned. The bond was undeniable. Ryan watched in quiet awe as the boys began to respond more and more. Their eyes followed voices. Their fingers twitched on command. Sometimes they even tried to hum back. Late one evening, after the twins had fallen asleep, Ryan and Jenna sat in the dim glow of the nursery lamp. The air felt heavy with unspoken words. When Laura was alive, he said suddenly, she used to sit by that window and talk about second chances. She said everyone deserves one, no matter how broken. He looked at Jenna. I didn't understand it then. I think I do now. Jenna smiled faintly. She sounds like she was wonderful. She was, he said softly, but she was also human. She got tired, scared. I didn't see it until it was too late. His eyes glistened. I swore after she died that I'd never let anyone close enough to hurt again, but then you walked in and everything started moving again. Not just for them, for me too. Jenna looked down, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know how to respond to that. Ryan gave a small smile. You don't have to, just don't disappear. She nodded slowly, but her eyes betrayed a quiet sadness. She had learned long ago that good things rarely stayed. 2 days later, Ryan got a call from his lawyer. We've located the archive head. The file shows she was legally released at 18. The state's record was never updated due to clerical error. We can clear it by Monday. Relief flooded through him. Thank God, he breathed. Send me the confirmation. But before he could celebrate, the lawyer added, there's something else. The Foundation's trust is under audit. Your family's guardianship program is being re-examined due to an anonymous complaint. They'll want testimony from anyone still connected, including her. Ryan's hand tightened around the phone. Another complaint? Yes, the lawyer said. Filed the same day the police showed up. His heart sank. Nina, he muttered. That evening he confronted her at her home. Nina opened the door pretending surprise. Ryan, what a nice— Stop, he said sharply. You reported my maid to child services. You called the hospital too. Why? She crossed her arms. Because I'm trying to protect my nephew. You've let a stranger manipulate her way into your life. She's not qualified to handle special needs children. Ryan's voice trembled with restrained fury. You weren't here when they couldn't move. You didn't see what she did. They spoke, Nina, they spoke. She blinked, stunned, then shook her head. You're too emotional to see clearly. This woman has a history tied to your family. Doesn't that sound convenient? It sounds like grace, he said. Something you wouldn't recognize if it knocked on your door. He turned to leave. Stay out of my house, Nina. Stay away from my sons. Back home, Jenna was sitting on the porch steps, the night air cool and soft around her. When she saw him, she stood quickly. You went out, he nodded. Handled something, she studied his face. You look tired. I am, he admitted, but not hopeless. He told her the news that her record would be cleared, that the state would confirm her release. She covered her mouth in disbelief, tears spilling over. You did that for me, he smiled faintly. No. You did it for yourself when you gave my boys a reason to fight. She laughed through the tears, shaking her head. You don't even realize it, do you? Realize what? You saved me too, she whispered. The following morning dawned bright and clear, the first real sunlight after days of rain. The mansion felt alive again. The twins were more alert than ever, responding to new sounds, even giggling faintly when Jenna played soft rhymes. Ryan recorded every moment, sending the clips to the doctors who couldn't believe their progress. Neurological reactivation beyond expected threshold, one of them wrote back. Continue home routine, minimal stress. That evening, as dusk settled, Ryan set the dinner table for the first time since his wife's passing. Sit, he told Jenna when she tried to help. Your family tonight. She hesitated but obeyed. They ate quietly, laughter coming easily when Owen sneezed mid-spoon and splattered puree on Ryan's shirt. Guess that's a compliment, Ryan joked, and Jenna laughed so hard she covered her mouth. For a moment it felt like a family dinner, warm, imperfect, real. After the meal they moved to the living room. Jenna wound the music box once more and the melody filled the space. The twins cooed softly, the sound gentle and full of peace. Ryan looked at her across the room, her face glowing in the golden light. You know, he said quietly, I used to hate that song. Laura played it when she was sick, said it reminded her to keep believing. I stopped listening to it after she passed. But now, he trailed off, watching the twins sway their fingers toward the sound. Now it feels like she sent you. Jenna looked up, eyes shimmering. Maybe she did. Just as the clock struck 9, a knock sounded at the door, firm, urgent. Ryan frowned, standing. When he opened it, a man in a dark jacket held out an envelope. Mr. Porter, he asked. Yes, court summons, guardianship review hearing Monday morning. You and Ms. Morris are required to appear. Ryan's stomach dropped. What kind of hearing? Audit of the Porter Foundation's legacy wards, the man replied. Failure to attend may affect your custodial rights due to her connection. Ryan took the envelope, jaw tightening. The man nodded politely and left. Jenna's face went pale when she saw the paper. They're dragging this out, she whispered. They won't let me stay. Ryan shook his head. We'll go together, whatever this is, we face it head on. She looked at him, voice trembling. And if they ask me questions I can't answer, he stepped closer, his voice firm but kind. Then you tell the truth, the whole truth, because after everything I've seen, that's the only story worth fighting for. The house fell quiet again, the night pressing against the windows. In the nursery, the twins slept peacefully, unaware of the storm gathering beyond their small world. Jenna stood by their cribs, humming softly, her fingers brushing their hair. Ryan watched from the doorway, 1,000 thoughts in his head, but one truth standing clear among them, that miracles were fragile and sometimes the world didn't know how to protect them. He knew the days ahead would test everything, his faith, his patience, his heart. But as he watched the woman who had breathed life back into his sons, he knew one thing for sure: he wouldn't let anyone take her away again. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, rolling toward the city like a promise. Inside, Ryan whispered under his breath, we'll face it together. And somewhere in the quiet, almost too soft to hear, one of the twins stirred in his sleep and mumbled a sound that might have been a word, might have been a dream, but whatever it was, it made Jenna's eyes fill with light again. The next morning came with gray clouds pressing low over the city, the kind of quiet that sits heavy on your shoulders before a storm. Ryan Porter hadn't slept a full hour. The court summons lay on his desk, the bold black letters staring at him like a challenge he hadn't asked for. Downstairs, the smell of warm oats drifted from the kitchen. Jenna was already up, feeding the twins like nothing had changed. He paused at the top of the staircase, listening to her soft hum float up through the hallway, the same gentle tune that had somehow rewired the rhythm of his son's hearts. The boys giggled tiny, cracked sounds that still felt like miracles. For a moment he closed his eyes and let it sink in. Even if the world came crashing down, even if lawyers and judges tried to strip the meaning from everything, this right here, this sound was real. It was worth fighting for. He walked into the kitchen, his voice rough from the night. "Morning," Jenna turned, startled. Her uniform was freshly pressed, though the dark circles beneath her eyes said she hadn't slept either. "Good morning, Mr. Porter," she said quietly. The twins smiled when they saw him, Owen trying to lift one small arm, Caleb's lips twitching like he wanted to form a word. Ryan knelt beside them, touched their hands and smiled. "You're both stronger today, huh?" The boys blinked, their eyes bright and clear. He looked up at Jenna. "You're coming with me to that hearing," he said simply. Her expression froze. "Ryan, you don't have to do that. They're investigating the foundation, not you personally." "No," he said firmly. "They're investigating my family, and now that includes you. We face it together." Jenna didn't argue after that. She just nodded slowly, though her fingers trembled as she wiped the twins' mouths. "I don't like courts," she murmured. "Every time I've been in one, something got taken from me." Ryan softened. "Then this time something gets given back." She met his eyes, unsure if she believed him, but the conviction in his voice steadied her enough to nod again. The drive to the courthouse on Monday morning felt longer than it should have. The clouds hung low, rain drumming lightly against the windshield. Ryan sat behind the wheel, focused and silent. Jenna sat beside him, wringing her hands, the little silver star bracelet glinting faintly in the light. "What if they don't believe me?" she whispered. "They will," he said without looking away from the road. "And if they don't, I'll make them." When they pulled up in front of the courthouse, reporters already stood behind metal barriers, cameras flashing like tiny explosions. Ryan's stomach tight. Word had gotten out. He stepped out of the car, ignoring the questions shouted his way. "Mr. Porter, is it true your foundation mishandled state children? Is the Maid really connected to your family?" He shielded Jenna as they walked quickly up the steps, his hand at her back, guiding her forward. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly and the air smelled of old paper and worry. They sat in the waiting area until a clerk called their names. The courtroom was smaller than Ryan expected, just a handful of benches, a high wooden desk, and a judge with half-moon glasses perched low on his nose. "Mr. Ryan Porter," the judge said, adjusting his files, "and Ms. Jenna Morris. This hearing is for clarification of the Porter Foundation's guardianship records, specifically regarding a ward named Jenna Parker, now Morris, whose status remains incomplete. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Ryan said, standing tall. The judge nodded. "You're here to confirm that Ms. Morris is no longer under state supervision, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." The judge looked at Jenna next. "Ms. Morris, I understand you were once placed under the Porter family's guardianship program as a minor." Jenna's voice shook. "Yes, sir, but I turned 18 years ago. The record was never closed." "And you currently work for Mr. Porter as a household employee?" "Yes, sir." "And in that role you care for his twin children?" "Yes," she said softly. "I help take care of them." The judge flipped through a folder, then looked over the rim of his glasses. "Ms. Morris, we've received conflicting reports regarding your involvement with the children. Some describe you as a positive influence, others as overstepping your role. Would you like to explain?" Jenna froze, Ryan's fists clenched. "She doesn't need to defend kindness," he said suddenly. The judge looked up, surprised. "Mr. Porter, with all due respect, Your Honor," Ryan continued, "that woman saved my son's lives. My twins were born paralyzed, unable to speak or move beyond small twitches. Every doctor, every therapist told me to accept it. But she walked into my house and did what no one else could. They spoke. They smiled. I don't care what label you put on it, maid, caretaker, miracle worker, she gave them a voice." His tone softened. "If that's overstepping, then I'm guilty too for believing in hope again." Courtroom was silent except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. Jenna stared at the floor, tears clinging to her lashes. The judge cleared his throat. "That's quite the testimony, Mr. Porter, but this isn't about miracles, it's about procedure." Ryan nodded slowly. "Then fix the procedure so the miracles can continue." The judge hid a small smile behind his papers. "I'll note your statement." He turned to Jenna. "Ms. Morris, do you have any documentation confirming your legal independence?" Jenna shook her head. "No, sir, I lost most of my records years ago when I moved. I never thought they'd matter again." The judge sighed. "That makes things more complicated. We can't close the file without proper verification." Ryan stepped forward. "Then check the foundation archives. You'll find her discharge form signed by my father and stamped by the welfare board." The judge raised an eyebrow. "You're cert?" "Absolutely," Ryan said. "I found it myself." The hearing dragged for hours. Paperwork was reviewed, phone calls made, and statements read aloud. At one point, Nina appeared in the back row, her arms folded, a smug look on her face. Jenna saw her and went still, her shoulders tense. Ryan noticed too but didn't let it shake him. He whispered, "Ignore her, she's noise." When it was finally Jenna's turn to speak freely, her hands trembled so much she had to grip the railing for balance. "Your Honor," she began, voice small but steadying as she went. I didn't come into that house to hurt anyone. I didn't even plan to stay. I saw two little boys who reminded me of what it feels like to fight for something your body won't give you. I wanted to help. If I broke a rule by caring too much, I'm sorry, but I won't apologize for loving those children. They made me believe in life again." By the end, her voice cracked. The courtroom stayed silent, the judge's pen frozen over his page. After a long pause, the judge spoke. "This court finds no evidence of misconduct or active guardianship under the state's authority. All prior records are hereby closed." Jenna's knees gave out a little and Ryan caught her arm to steady her. The judge continued, "However, given the publicity surrounding this case, I strongly recommend a follow-up welfare inspection in 30 days. I trust that won't be an issue." "Not at all, Your Honor," Ryan said firmly. The judge nodded. "Then this hearing is adjourned." The gavel fell sharp and final. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was still gray but softer now, like the world had exhaled. Jenna stood at the top of the courthouse steps, staring out at the wet street. She didn't say anything for a long time. Ryan came to stand beside her. "It's over," he said quietly. "You're free." She turned toward him, eyes shining. "I don't know how to thank you," he smiled faintly. "You already did." "How?" "You gave my sons their voices," he said softly. "And maybe you gave me mine back too." She looked away quickly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "They'll still inspect your home," she said. "That could cause trouble for your company," he shrugged. "Then I'll open the door and show them what love looks like, let them see for themselves." The drive home was quiet, but it wasn't heavy anymore. When they walked into the house, the twins were in the living room with Ms. Ellis, both boys awake and laughing. It was a sound that filled every corner of the mansion, a sound that erased every shadow of fear. "They've been waiting for you," Ms. Ellis said with a grin. "They even tried new sounds this morning." Jenna gasped. "Really?" She dropped to her knees beside them. "Show me Bobby's." Owen smiled and made a soft mm sound, followed by a tiny duh. Caleb followed with a gurgle that almost sounded like laughter. Jenna pressed her hands over her heart. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "They're talking." Ms. Ellis nodded, eyes damp. "It's slow, but it's happening." Ryan stood there watching, overwhelmed by a tide of emotions he couldn't name. Relief, pride, gratitude, all tangled up in something deeper. He crouched beside Jenna, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "You did this," he said quietly. She shook her head. "We did." The twins reached for them both, tiny fingers touching their hands at the same time. It was a picture of pure connection, two little lives bridging the gap between grief and grace. Days turned into weeks and everything began to heal. The inspection came and went with no issues. The officers who had once looked at Jenna with suspicion now left smiling, calling the twins miracle boys. Ms. Ellis submitted her final therapy report to the hospital. Unprecedented progress observed. Recommend continuation of home-based emotional sound therapy under Jenna Morris's supervision. Ryan framed a copy of that report and hung it in his study, right beside his late wife's photo. "She'd be proud," he told Jenna one evening, and she smiled softly. "I hope so." One evening, after putting the twins to bed, they sat outside on the porch watching the sunset bleed gold and crimson across the sky. Jenna traced the little star charm on her bracelet, the metal warm from the sun. "You know," she said quietly, "I think she's still here, your wife." In the way the boys laugh now. "In the way this house feels alive again." Ryan nodded slowly. "I think she sent you. Maybe she knew we needed each other." Jenna's throat tightened. "That's too much credit for someone like me." "No," he said firmly, "it's not enough." They fell into silence again, the kind that doesn't need words. The sound of crickets rose in the distance and a soft breeze rustled through the trees. Jenna looked up at the sky and whispered, "Sometimes the things that break us are the same things that build us." Ryan smiled faintly. "And sometimes the people we think we're saving are the ones saving us." He turned toward her, his voice softer now. "Stay, Jenna, not because the boys need you, because we do." Her eyes widened. "Ryan, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," he said. "This house isn't a home without you in it." She looked away, blinking hard as the wind tugged at her hair. "Then I'll stay," she whispered. "As long as they need me," he smiled. "That might be forever." Inside, the twins stirred in their sleep, one of them murmuring something soft and sweet. It wasn't clear, but Ryan could have sworn he heard the faint word mama. Jenna froze, eyes wide, tears spilling freely. Ryan looked at her, his heart swelling. "They said it," he whispered. "They really said it." She covered her mouth, her body shaking with quiet sobs. "Laura would have loved this moment," Ryan said softly, "and I think she'd be okay with them calling you that." Jenna looked at him, voice trembling. "Are you?" He smiled gently. "I think I am." The night deepened, wrapping them in the quiet rhythm of peace. The once gold mansion now glowed with life, a father reborn, two sons rediscovering joy, and a woman who had carried her own broken past into a home that finally made her whole again. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. I want to know where our family of believers in miracles is growing from.